this morning on the deaths of Fast and Furious star Paul Walker and his friend killed in a fiery car accident over the weekend. Investigators working right now to determine the cause of the wreck.
That's why I'm shocked.
Hours after Paul Walker's death, while the world was in mourning, his multi-million-dollar garage was being plundered. 30 of the rarest cars on Earth vanished into thin air.
Paul Walker's collection. These people are going to come out in droves to come look at these cars.
Since we made the announcement during our Las Vegas auction, it's been overwhelming the amount of press that want to come out and see the cars. We would open it up and let people come out.
A high-stakes heist hidden in the shadows of a tragedy. For 12 years, the doors stayed locked, until now. What investigators just found inside wasn't just a collection. It's a secret Paul was never supposed to have. To understand why these machines were worth a high-stakes heist, we have to get into the man who owned the cars. The car connoisseur. Most people remember Paul Walker as the Fast and the Furious actor who made the Nissan Skyline a household name. However, the truth is that he was a racer long before he ever stepped onto any movie set. While Hollywood saw an actor, the car community knew him as the guy who spent his weekends competing in the Redline Time Attack series. Not only did he push cars to their absolute limits on professional tracks, he also loved the thrill of driving at incredible speed. His taste in vehicles was remarkably different from most typical celebrities. It's no surprise Hollywood stars buy the trendiest and flashiest cars, but Paul wasn't that kind of guy. The most important parts of cars to him were the workings of the car engines. He was more interested in finding homologation specials, which are rare street-legal versions of motorsports. It all made sense since he was obsessed with Japanese imports and German engineering that required a high level of skill to drive. Soon, his love for cars turned into passion, and to keep this passion alive, Paul Walker started a business with a professional racer and financial advisor named Roger Rodas. Together, they opened a car shop called Always Evolving in Valencia, California, which was a facility that housed a rare collection of cars. This lifestyle and motorsport brand was the perfect mix of Paul Walker's love for entertainment and car culture. Even when he got the part of Brian O'Connor in The Fast and the Furious, he never missed an opportunity to talk about the cars used in shooting, and some of his ideas were actually used to improve the film's authenticity. Away from the movie set, his garage was a sanctuary where he could be himself, surrounded by the people and the projects he loved most. He had spent years carefully curating this private collection, turning it into a masterpiece of automotive history. But the sanctuary of this automobile museum was shattered in a single afternoon, leaving a multi-million-dollar fleet at risk. In November 2013, Always Evolving hosted a charity toy drive for Reach Out Worldwide, popularly known as ROWW, in order to support victims of a massive typhoon that had occurred in the Philippines. Just as you'd expect, Paul Walker and his business partner, Roger Rodas, were both scheduled to participate in the event. The vehicle they chose for a quick spin was a red Porsche Carrera GT. This specific model is a legend among car enthusiasts for being incredibly difficult to master. Because of its V10 engine, it is said to lack the modern safety sensors found in most cars on the road. Paul particularly knew this car inside and out, but he felt it was the perfect car for such an event. But that decision alone would lead to an unexpected turn. Within a few minutes of driving a distance from the event's venue, the car crashed, and just like that, everything changed. After many interventions from friends and attendees of the toy drive, both men were pronounced dead at the scene. The news of their death hit hard, and soon word had gotten to the employees at Always Evolving. The private workshop, in no time, became a site of mourning, with thousands of fans gathered outside with candles and posters. While the public and employees grieved the loss of their idol and boss, some had a different motive. As the days went by, the team at Always Evolving realized that several key pieces of the rare car collection were missing, leading to a decade-long legal thriller. The car heist. Within 24 hours of the tragedy, some cars were moved out of the shop, and it wasn't an authorized move. According to court papers filed later in 2015, 31 vehicles were illegally taken before the estate could even secure the building. The lawsuit named a former associate and employee of the car company, Richard Taylor, as the person behind the theft. He was accused of organizing the removal and then hiding the cars in secret locations across the country. The estate had to act quickly to protect the interests of Paul Walker's daughter, Meadow Walker. since she was the sole heir to her father's fortune. The legal team made some very serious claims during the trial, and they believed Taylor was trying to extort the family by holding the cars as leverage. He allegedly refused to give up the locations of the vehicles or return the titles unless he received a payout. The missing cars weren't just any regular kind. The inventory list included rare Porsches and several of those famous white BMWs that are now worth millions. Even a Ford Crown Victoria had been snatched up in the chaos. Tracking these cars became a massive investigation, and the only thing that made it easier was the fact that each vehicle has a unique code called Vehicle Identification Number, or VIN. Private investigators spent over a year scouring the underground car world to see if any of the stolen vehicles popped up for sale. They followed paper trails across state lines and interviewed anyone who might have any of the missing cars. The stakes were high, but the legal pressure and the constant searching finally forced the cars back into the light. The battle was intense and personal for everyone who cared about Paul Walker, and they were hell-bent on making sure his daughter rightfully got custody of the collection her father intended for her. After a long fight, the cars were returned, and the mystery was solved. Even though the public wasn't aware of what the final settlement was in 2016, the garage doors finally swung open to reveal exactly what Paul had been hiding. The crew were back to business as usual and had the garage running again. When the estate finally began a full inventory for a retrospective look at the late actor's life, the scene inside was incredible. The cars were covered in dust, yet they were still intact. Under the covers sat a case that had most likely never been touched in over a decade. The sheer variety of the collection proved that Paul was a true car enthusiast who cared less about price tags. To keep things organized, the garage was split into specific sections. One wing was dedicated to Japanese imports, while another held German precision, and the third was filled with heavy American muscles. One of the most interesting finds was inside a 2005 Ford Mustang GT that Paul once owned. When the new curators opened it up, they found a stack of original receipts that showed over $35,000 spent on high-performance parts and labor. It provided a paper trail showing exactly how much Paul invested in his cars. Best believe he was very much interested and involved in every upgrade. His friends and the people who worked at the shop always said the garage was a work in progress, and it was in good hands since it was under Paul's care. This was confirmed by the handwritten notes scattered around the garage. Also, there was a desk area in the back of the warehouse that had a small pile of unopened mail from fans. Even though he was a global superstar, Paul seemed to keep these letters close by. Among the hundreds of cars, one fleet stood out. Shockingly, it was the largest collection of a single BMW model on Earth. The White Fleet. Paul had an obsession that went far beyond his love for Japanese imports. He owned a massive collection of German cars that he didn't let anyone touch. This group of cars was famously known as the White Fleet because every single one of them was painted bright alpine white. These were not your average BMWs, they were 1995 Mid-3 lightweights, which car collectors often call the E36 unicorns, and only about 126 of these cars were ever built for the American market, but somehow Paul managed to track down and buy 7 of them, owing nearly 5% of the entire world's production for that specific model. And these particular cars weren't like the ones he drove on screen. They came from the factory without radios, air conditioning, or even floor mats to keep the weight as low as possible. They didn't even have carpets in the trunk. These were stripper cars meant for serious drivers who wanted to feel every vibration of the road, but Paul loved them for their raw performance. To own 7 of the same car might seem strange to some people, but Paul saw them as the perfect investment and a brilliant business move. The thing was, Paul had an eye for spotting young-timer classics before they became valuable. He was essentially hoarding these machines as a hedge against the future, knowing that one day collectors would realize how special they were. His vision was proven right during a massive auction in 2020 when his white BMW sold for over $385,000 at the Barrett-Jackson Scottsdale auction in Arizona. Not only that, it was the highest recorded for that model. 5 of his lightweights were put up for sale and brought in a combined total of over $1 million. For a long time, there was a mystery surrounding the final count of these cars. During the legal battle over the missing inventory, investigators struggled to locate the seventh BMW before they could finally account for it. This last car was eventually brought back to the estate as part of the 12-year recovery process. Having the fleet back together was a major win for his family. While the BMWs showed his precision, the back corner of the garage was a show for his love of JDM culture. Paul's love for the vehicles and parts designed and manufactured in Japan was no secret. He was the unofficial king of JDM culture in America. It was easy to mistake the back corner of his warehouse for a car workshop in Tokyo. Somewhere in his garage is where he kept his legendary Nissan Skyline R34s. These vehicles were Motor-X cars, which meant it was illegal for them to be on American roads. Getting these cars into the United States legally was a nightmare, but somehow Paul managed to bypass those complex laws. He went on to own some of the only road-legal R34s in the country at the time. Right near those R34s was a 1989 Skyline R32. This one was special because it was just a simple, clean white vehicle built specifically for the track. During the inventory, the always evolving team also found storage bins filled with original decals and spare parts from the cars he featured in the Fast and the Furious movie. However, the cherry on top was his 1998 Toyota Supra Turbo. This particular car was the vehicle featured not only in the final scene of Furious 7, but also in the See You Again music video. The late actor went ahead and acquired multiple Supras over the years, including a 1994 JZA80 model. Unlike many collectors, he drove them regularly and even entered them in regional racing events under his always evolving team banner. After his passing, these cars remained largely under the stewardship of the Walker Family Foundation. Some of them were sold, like the famous orange 1994 Toyota Supra from the original The Fast and the Furious, which was sold at an auction for a record $550,000 in 2021.
The Fast and the Furious Candy Orange car continues to make history when Barrett Jackson hosted an auction for the Supra in Las Vegas and was sold to an undisclosed phone bidder at a staggering amount of $550,000.
Paul didn't only exclusively like Japanese cars, he also had a thing for American cars. American muscle. One of the most impressive pieces in his collection was a 1967 Chevy Nova Custom. This car was a pro touring machine that combined classic 1960s style with modern performance. When this car finally hit the auction block in 2020, it became one of the main attractions because of how clean and well engineered it was. Another standout was his Ford Mustang Boss 302S. This car was a gift from a fellow racing enthusiast who admired Paul's dedication to the sport. The Boss 302S is a beast built by Ford specifically for racing. It comes with a massive roll cage, racing seats, and a high-performance engine designed to run at full throttle for hours. The most shocking detail discovered when the garage doors opened was the mileage, as if it had 0 miles on it. It had never been driven on a track or even down the street before it was eventually sold. Just like the Mustang, the Celine S7 Paradox had also garnered reactions for many reasons. For years, there were rumors that Paul owned one of these ultra-rare American supercars. While he certainly appreciated that level of engineering, the final inventory helped clear up what was actually in the shop. His garage also held a few surprises that showed he kept several modified GMC and Ford trucks. Even with his love for speed, Paul still appreciated the slow ride of the 1964 Chevy Impala, which he owned. His love for cars had set the stage for the most emotional public event in automotive history. In early 2020, the estate decided it was time to share some of these treasures with the world through the Barrett Jackson auction in Scottsdale. They put 21 vehicles up for sale, which fans and car enthusiasts from all over the world came to witness. The auction was a massive success, as the cars sold at prices that were shocking, so much so that they broke 5 records at the end of the night. At the end of the auction, they had raised $2.3 million. Every cent of that money went to the Paul Walker Foundation to continue his work in ocean conservation and assisting displaced communities. Even with most of the garage emptied, a new, massive recent discovery has made headlines, and it might just be unexpected. The lost R34. The headlines in March 2026 brought a shock to everyone in the car world. For nearly 2 decades, people wondered what happened to the original silver and blue Nissan Skyline R34 from the second movie. It had vanished from the public eye for almost 18 years. However, recent reports have finally verified that the car was sitting in a private living room in Europe this entire time. This discovery is a massive deal because that specific Skyline is considered the most valuable vehicle from the entire franchise. To make sure this was the real deal, investigators brought in the man who practically built the car culture of the franchise, Craig Lieberman. He was the technical advisor who helped Paul choose his cars for the films, and after thorough inspection, he confirmed it was the true hero car Paul had driven in the movie. It still had every scratch and custom part that matched the original production notes from decades ago. After a long period of negotiations, the car finally made its way back to the Walker family collection in the United States. Meadow Walker has shared that she wants to preserve this piece of her father's history so future generations can see the machine that started the global JDM craze. While the big discoveries make the news, the most important cars never went to auction. There were certain vehicles that the family labeled as off-limits. These are the cars that Meadow kept because of their deep sentimental value. This includes Paul's favorite daily cars, such as the trucks he used for his charity work and the specific R34 Skylines he loved most. For Meadow, this was her way of staying connected to her father and his passion. She still makes sure they are properly maintained by professional conservators who understand their historical importance. The family decided to keep these cars in their original condition. Instead of making them look brand new, they are preserving the patina, or the natural wear and tear from when Paul drove them. These cars are hidden away in private storage, where they are kept in a climate-controlled environment to prevent them from wearing out. 12 years after the tragedy, the legacy of always evolving is still a major part of car culture. The brand has moved from being a simple shop to a symbol of high-performance excellence. Even if you can't afford one of Paul's real cars, you can still experience his taste. His collection has been digitized for games like Gran Turismo, allowing fans to virtually drive the exact setups he spent years perfecting. Meadow has also flourished, carrying the family name with grace through her successful career in fashion and her continued work with the Fast franchise. The movies have handled Paul's character with incredible respect, keeping Brian O'Connor alive in the story as a way to honor the man who was the heart of the series. Paul's legacy is not just about the fast cars or the movies, but mostly about the passion he put into everything he did, whether it was acting or cars. Now that these cars are back where they belong, it raises a big question. If all the cars in the garage collection are eventually sold off, what could be the future of always evolving? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching.